So my point is, I'm going to start with the dialogue because I've received a few private questions and I'm asking you not to write to me privately right now. There's no way I'll have time to answer so many questions, but I am going to take those up. And if Jay Prakash, if you remember the order of those whose questions I missed too, we'll start flowing through that. We'll chant Om once. Oh. Narayana. The focus of our retreat is the joy of independence. And this seems counterintuitive to what a relationship should be, yet it's not. And we explored a verse from Dridrisha Viveka, in which Acharya Shankara shares, one should practice samadhi. Samadhi simply means contemplation, but the etymology of this word is to well and fully place the ego. To well and fully place your ego into another's ego. Into another's ego. The reason for this, when two become one, that is the spirit. We have separation between us right now, and as long as there's separation, there will be vices. And I explained that yesterday. We're not lusty towards ourselves. We're not jealous of ourselves. We're not greedy towards ourselves because there's only oneness here. In a relationship, of course we should contemplate, but the feeling of two should become one. And who should do this? In the third quarter, Acharya Shankara shares, you should. We're deflecting. We want our spouse to contemplate on this oneness. So many of your questions were about that. Asmi iti. This is for you. Acharya Shankara is sharing, or I should feel asmi iti. This is for me. He gives 4 synonyms on what oneness feels like. These are all synonyms. They are not different words. Asanga, Ananda, Ashraya, Advaita. All synonyms that if I'm able to merge my ego with my partners, Asanga means independence. Ananda means joy. Ashraya means self-dependent. Advaita means oneness. Now for us, these words are quite abstract. What does self-dependence mean? What does oneness mean? To work up to such an absolute message, we have to hold on to the relative, and that means by reducing our vices, we reduce our separation. And Vilasniji pointed that out. When we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot take care of others. If I'm an angry person, even at myself, my past, or my parents, I'm a worse husband then. I can't be a very good father then. For a sangha, what I shared with you at a relative and practical sense was engage in satsanga. The practical way to do this, sleep early. How many of you practiced this yesterday? You slept earlier than usual. Good. I know that will all change tomorrow, but at least you did it for one night. 4, Ananda, the relative message is sadhana. Once you have a taste of associating with nobility, that taste tends to be external, through books or through people. Sadhana, you start to feel that in yourself. And to practice this, respond. When we are slower in our acting and speaking and thinking, we respond. In terms of ashraya, to be self-dependent, to be self-supporting, at a relative sense, this means to feel that your relationship is your seva, is your service. And a practice in doing this, less negativity. I have found, being married for almost 11 years, there is no point in being negative. None. In thinking like that, certainly not in speaking like that. And everyone picks up on that too. When Sheila and I are not in sync, then our son's not even 4 years old, but he gets out of sync also. And it's not like we yell at each other. Most likely we're just not talking to each other as much, and he observes that. So he becomes more talkative, not in a healthy way. Negativity is futility. And finally, in terms of Advaita, at a relative level, the word was swatantra. Swatantra means to be a machine, where you no longer have wants. When you don't have wants, at a practice level, you can give your spouse what they need. What is it that we all need? Joy. A workplace may not be able to give that. A sibling may not be able to give that. For many, they can't give that to themselves. But if you're a machine where you have no wants, you can give them what they need. After I completed the discourse, we focused on a discussion on best practices for hard conversations. And the two observations I shared was to be less serious. The culture of your relationship should be to be less serious. And many of you shared that. In the beginning of your relationship, you were lighthearted. But as the years go on, you become heavy-hearted, where even small things become huge, which is anti-titiksha. Titiksha means to endure. Conversely, as our relationship goes on in age, there should be more endurance, more lightness. And the other observation I shared was to be appreciative in a sincere way. Don't just appreciate in a fake way. They will know that too. But if you're, let me put it this way. Sometimes when people ask me, am I being egotistical? And as soon as they say that, the answer is yes. If you're contemplating on whether you're being egotistical or not, the answer is yes. If you're considering being appreciative, do it. That should be our instinct. Okay? Some private questions. I am single and in a confused state of mind as to, isn't the path to moksha easier in solidarity instead of getting married? Should we have a survey about that right now? Basically, trying to understand per our spiritual learnings, why should one get married? Other than having a companion for life factor. You don't have to be married or not married for enlightenment. Independent joy is unconditional. You don't have to have kids or not have kids to be enlightened. It is unconditional. I don't care what condition you propose, I'm going to come back and say it's unconditional. So why should one get married? Because you really know who you are in an uncontrolled environment. When you're in a controlled environment, you will always project that you are like this, but you've never been tested in that. It is the uncontrolled environment where you're tested, and everyone who's married Do you resonate with what I'm sharing? And see, they all have smiles on their faces out of support of what I'm sharing. And very simply, Duryodhana thinks that he cares for Acharya Drona and Acharya Bhishma, but when push comes to shove, he doesn't care for them. See how that tension reveals who he is? When I know my weaknesses, I can start to work on them. But if my weakness is hidden, I can never be enlightened. This is why one should get married for more comprehensive sadhana. Having a companion for life is a very useless reason to get married. It shows your dependency and you're going to keep on being dependent. Which is why in the Gurukula, from age 0 to 23, let's say, the focus of one's life is vrata, which means being committed to yourself or loving yourself so that you can love others. But that's not what we learn in school anymore, correct? We learn how to manipulate others. I told you about master class, remember? So when you learn to love yourself, you just keep on giving. So don't be confused, okay? You flow through life in the way that's going to lead you to independent joy. If everything I shared was too much, revolve around people who have found themselves, and you will too. Next, how do we deal with situations where my spouse feels very negative towards a family member, but I don't feel the same way? How many of you are in a similar circumstance? I love how people are actually putting their hands up with their spouse beside them right now. Too much openness in this community. How to address it with my spouse where I can still feel positive about the family member, but also validate how my spouse feels. What a pertinent question. Listen more. The more active of a listener you are, your spouse will feel validated. In listening, you don't have to feel the same way. Half of the people in Chinmay Mission London are psychiatrists. They have to listen all day, but based on what I know of them, they're still healthy physically, mentally, intellectually. At least they appear like that. So listen actively. Part of this is to share actively too. Respectfully, objectively. Because in this communion with you and your spouse, your opinions are allowed to be your opinions. And this reminds me of a lovely sutra from Jivan Sutrani, Swami Tejomayananda's book. You should feel like all are like you within, but not feel like all are like you without. Meaning, we are all one according to the spirit, but all of our minds are different. Yes, that is a really fantastic way to live. Advaita and Dvaita. What if I feel that agreeing with my spouse is against what I feel is spiritually right? You have to decide what's more important here, being right or your relationship. Based on what you're sharing with me, you being spiritually right is more important if you've practiced the earlier steps. If you've practiced the earlier steps. If you disagree with what I'm sharing, that's completely fine. Try to follow the whole principle of, I will follow what my spouse is deciding, but I dissent. I simply don't feel the same way, cheerfully, not in a combative way. And the last private question, would you please share with the group the difference between religion and spirituality? Yeah. Religion is made up of philosophy and practice. in engineering, theory and application. Both are required for transformation. Spirituality is just the theory or just the philosophy, but not practicing that so one doesn't transform. Oppositely is ritualism, is just practice, but you don't know what you're practicing, so there's no transformation there either. And this is so clearly observed in how defensive those who are spiritual are against those who engage in rituals, and those who engage in rituals in terms of those who are spiritual. But the one who's religious, the one who does both, they're not defensive. They're confident in the way that they understand and live. The word religion comes from a Latin base, religere, which means to bind back. In Sanskrit, the word is yanti, which is to return home. You'll find that word throughout Srimad Bhagavad Gita. For those who are studying in Meaningful Mornings, I'll point this out to you. Okay, right on. Now I've answered the private questions. One of the seekers has asked 3 private questions, and I've only taken the first one. So now, Jay Prakash, do you know the order of those questions that I've missed?
Yes, Vivekji, the first person will be, seeker will be Tushar Patel.
Tushar, if you still have a question, you can virtually put your hand up. Next. He may not have a question, so who's next? Tushar, do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So next will be Shobha.
Shobha, question? Yes, okay. Shobha, you can unmute yourself. Our team can help.
Hari Om, Vivekji and Vilasiji, thank you very much for all the teachings. So my mom and dad had 55 plus years of marriage. They used to eat, drink, everything together. After 10 months of my father's loss, how can I help my mom that you're separate and he's separate? How can I help her support it? Thank you very much.
Understood, Shobha. From a proactive perspective, what Shobha is describing right now about being married for a long time and then not knowing what to do with oneself because that relationship is not physically alive anymore. From a proactive perspective, it is important for every part of a relationship to be independent. What Shobha is describing, and I know lots of relationships like this, where when one spouse passes away, within months or a year, the other one does, despite no physical illnesses. And so much of that is because of emotional dependency. I'd shared this in the parenting workshop I just finished. Parents teach their kids everything other than how to live without their parents. Yes? When that's one of the most important messages, to learn to live without me because I'm not going to be around forever. Proactively, every relationship, couples, families, invest in being independent. Don't challenge interdependence, rather focus on independence. Reactively now. The more happy you are, the more you can share that with your mother. For a parent, what they finally want for a child is for their child to be happy. And so if you can be happy, you'll relieve your mother of some of the negativity that she's feeling right now. And be expressive about that happiness. You're doing well, your kids are doing well, etc. Part of that expression is to regularly interact with her to remind her of how fortunate she was in her lifetime, as in to celebrate your father's life rather than to focus on his absence. A lot of people have changed that mentality, rightfully so. Like when Kobe Bryant and his daughter passed away, they had a celebration of life. That is a fine idea. I would like the same to happen for me. if people wish to celebrate. They'll celebrate finally. And finally, if you can, share insights about life and death with your mother, particularly from Bhagavad Gita or Bhajagovindam, knowledge works best, but one has to be ready for that knowledge, the dose of that knowledge. But undoubtedly, if one has this insight that a less fresh body is released and a more fresh body is picked up, then that's amazing. It's like graduating from a grade. Now I've learned everything I could, now I get to learn more. Okay? And it's not easy. Next.
Next will be Sonal, Vivekji.
Sonal, if you're here, if you have a question, you can virtually put your hand up.
Hi, Vivekji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you very much. This is my first retreat. So yesterday when you took us through all the retreats, I wasn't keeping quiet just for the heck of it. I genuinely did not attend any, but this is my first. So thank you so much. It's been quite enlightening. My question is more an observation, and which then is a question for you, is that what I notice is that when we try to merge the teachings of Vedanta into our transactional lives and kind of form some kind of or come out with a manual or steps, often it comes across more as advice. Do this, these are the 5 steps and all that.
Sure.
I feel what gets missed out is that the aspect where you are asking the person to validate their own feelings.
Okay.
And process it before going ahead to what to do. So what I'm saying is that, why am I feeling this? So if I'm resentful, for example, in a situation, if I'm given to understand that, or if I'm told that, you contemplate or at least think about the why of your resentfulness, then just by me having that opportunity or that validation from somebody else or the other, kind of 50% calms me down.
Got it. Okay.
So what I'm saying is there a reason? And once again, this could also be because it's a Zoom conference, and I'm sure the live would be a little different.
Okay.
So is it because of that, or is it the nature of the retreat in a Vedantic aspect that you're
Right.
just told do's and don'ts, but not
Right.
the how and the why?
Got it. I'm muting you. Sonal is tired of the advice that Acharya Shankara is giving, which I can resonate also with. Firstly, Sanatana Dharma is very much not about do's and don'ts. It is about dharma. Dharma means follow your responsibilities and gives various reasons or inspiration to do so. Bhagavan Krishna doesn't tell Prince Arjuna what to do or what not to do. At the end of Bhagavad Gita, he shares, now I'm done talking to you, do whatever you want. The only do's and don'ts you will see is in the early portions of the Ashtanga Yoga, which is the yamas, that is the don'ts, and the niyamas. After that, there's no do's and don'ts. Most of us don't have the energy or time to reflect. Yes? And especially virtually. My discourses are only 30 minutes now. If this was live, they would be at least an hour or an hour and a half. Now 30, because virtually we can't focus. In general, we can. So after that, we have a discussion, then we have dialogue. We don't have the energy or time to reflect. Sheila, my wife, and I talk about this all the time. She's engaged in her professional work, her family work, her service work. Where is the time to reflect? If I can show you our kitchen right now, you would be shocked, not in the positive. Where is the time when there's just perpetual responsibilities? So we don't reflect. And if we did, we wouldn't have any problems. How much I share in my classes, stop engaging in Shravana. Dedicate that time and energy to Manana in a specific samashti way. I use the wrong word. In a specific vyashti way. Vyashti means methodical way. So yes, you wouldn't have any problems. Knowing the people that are part of the retreat, knowing so many other partners and families, where a message on sleep early can be quite transformative. Or sink early. Many have shared with me the idea of let's challenge each other to forgive early. That simple guidance or instruction, that helps them to reflect more. No one is going to touch you and you're going to get enlightened. You have to feel this yourself. Okay?
Yeah.
Any
Thank
other
you very
questions? Sure.
Thank you very much. And the sleep?
Right, so I'm going to go on to the next question. Jay Prakash, anything else?
Next will be Radhika Korse.
Okay, Radhika?
Hari Om Vivekji. This was a bit of my question or dialogue from yesterday. So the question is about divorce. I feel like what was discussed just now. I feel we have talked a lot about, or we try to support that uphold your marriage. In my own family setting, my father always told me, you have to think about what makes sense for the children. And so we are 4 siblings, 3 of them have divorced, and my parents supported that because that was the right thing in the situation. For me, the advice has always been uphold your marriage. Sure. Because of the traits with my spouse that they see are very respectful. So with that background, now from the children's point of view, my siblings, one of the child and my child, they committed the same sin, which is weeds. And the punishment or the post-mortem of that for my child, my mom was very blurted out saying that you shouldn't do it. You should take a vow not to do it. And when
so what is the question? Part of my responsibility is just to get to the question in these dialogues.
Yeah, in India, what I'm observing is that this whole question about divorce, it's my siblings are lucky that they have supportive parents, but the situation is that the society is not supportive.
Got it. So I'll share my observations on divorce. I think that's what you're getting to. There's a lot of people in this retreat who are divorced. And they're happily divorced. You've heard from some of them through different workshops. The purpose of a relationship is to help you be enlightened. If you're in an abusive relationship where you don't have the space to grow towards enlightenment, then what is the purpose of that relationship? See, if we did this at a friend level, no one would question that. But in terms of a marriage level, yes, many in society would question that, would be against that. And the best way to really come to a conclusion about this is put yourself in that position. If you're in an abusive relationship, will you be a better person or a worse person? If you can still handle it, put your son or daughter in that circumstance. Then I feel you'll come to a much clearer understanding and decision. The acronym I share in terms of divorce, what should you do if you're in a challenging relationship? Pray, lead, engage, accept. If acceptance does not work, depart. Then one should not be in that relationship, especially when there are kids involved. I have seen too many kids who grow up, and particularly what happens is a husband who's most mean to his wife. And I've seen too many kids who grow up thinking that's what it means to be a husband. and there's that systemic meanness or abuse. And in this example, if the mother had the courage, if she was supported to not be in that relationship, then those kids would grow up and they would feel courageous too, that this was done for them. And I'm sure you know many such circumstances also. The more that we discuss this, the more we relate to this, it is people like us who vote. We determine who's elected and the policies that come from that. The same goes with society. The ideas of gender norms, sexuality norms, all of these norms, it is we people who create such a culture. And that's why such dialogue is important. Okay? And there's others who have asked about divorce too, so I've generally shared my observations on that. We're going to continue now to our dynamics. I believe I've covered all of the questions that were in line. Yes?
Yes, Vivekji. There was a question in the chat, but it was so very similar to the last one.
Good. There is no end to dialogue. These dialogues can be for 6 hours and there will be no end. So we just have to come to a completion. Let's start with debriefing on your RAD, your reflection adventure of the day from 2 nights ago. I'd asked you to not use any emotional descriptions. How many of you tried that? What was your observation in not personalizing matters? You can share in the chat. How is your day different? How are you different as you're writing? You stuck to the facts and you moved on. It was very difficult. You were less annoyed. When one is more objective, all becomes easier. It is when we're subjective that matters become harder. As simple as for a physician, they can't operate on their own child or spouse because that objectivity is not there. Someone else has to come and do that. Your RAD from yesterday that was shared with you today was to count how many times you appreciated your spouse. Does anyone want to share their number? And if you don't, it means 0. How many times did you appreciate your spouse? 1, 4, 3, 127. I think that was a typo. Your hands hit the keyboard, yes? 12, 28, 0. Okay. How many times did you expect appreciation from your spouse? How many times did you expect? 0 is because you're in this workshop, yes? Because you're in this retreat. Many, 2, lots, too many. The observation I have towards this, I feel the ratios are unfair. We expect way more appreciation than we give. That's unfair. If someone ripped you off in terms of buying something, like when you go to Bharat and you're a tourist, even though you have a Hindi accent, they still know you're a tourist and you get ripped off. How do you feel about that? See, you don't even care about the rupees. It's in principle that you were ripped off that bothers you the most, yes? We do that with our emotions. Here is your ray, your reflection adventure of the year. Until our next marriage enrichment retreat. And we pray that this will be physical. We pray it will finally come out of Chinmay Mission London because it's just in a holding position over Chinmay Mission London right now. Every time you're experiencing a vice, fear, judgment, insecurity, whenever you're feeling this vice, I want you to refer to satsang, sadhana, seva, swatantra. Refer to these. Which one do you need in that experience to quell that vice and close that separation? The more the separation, the more the vices. The less the vices, the less the separation. Have you all watched the show Stranger Things? In Stranger Things, they have this portal where this creature can come out. And the bigger that portal is, the more the creature can come out. So what do they try to do? Close that portal so the creature can't come out. That's like our egos. Close that separation so the ego can't come out. All right, dialogue complete in its fullest way. We'll engage in dynamics briefly. Here's what you have to do now, okay? I want you to find in your living space something that reminds you of. Let me list them out first, okay? You have to find something in your living space. Don't go too far. Many just sign out. We'll see you next year. So something in your living space that reminds you of. Number one is your childhood. Number two, weakness. Number three, success. So that means three things in your living space. One about childhood, one about weakness, and one about success. Everyone's clear? Okay, you have 90 seconds to do that. Go. Go find it and bring it back. Humans don't count, okay? You're just pointing to your spouse. Weakness. I mean success. Childhood, weakness, success. Twenty more seconds. Okay, everyone's back. Show me your childhood reminder. What reminds you of your childhood? Some tape, decorations, a pencil, some mask, baseball glove, pictures, looks like chalk, a photograph of yourself. Don't be too creative. Stuffed animals. Okay, right on. Uno. Okay, next, weakness. What reminds you of weakness? Slime. Fire roasted something. Jalapeno chips. Cell phones, definitely. I can't see what everyone is sharing. A crutch. That's a good one too. Coffee mug, I thoroughly disagree. You are wrong, so put that down. Lots of candies and cranberry cookies. Okay, success. Show me your reminder of success. Notebooks, family photographs, an icon of Gurudev, a picture of a woman, Vivekji, 7 Steps to Awakening, Japamala. Right on pencil. It looks like a conch and the high five challenge and a pet. Lovely. Okay. Next, that was more about the past. We're going to shift to the present. I want you to take a photograph of yourself about how you are dependent. This is more complex, okay? Think about how you are dependently joyous. Now go take a selfie that shows how dependently joyous you are. Everyone's clear about that? Think about how you are dependently joyous. Now go into your living space and take a photograph of yourself with that dependent joy. Think more about it. Try. You're all taking photographs of each other right now. When you're done, write in the chat, what did you take a photograph of? So some have shared a selfie with TV, selfie with family, selfie with laptop, selfie with Hanumanji, sure, selfie with bed and pillows, chai mug, with food, with my freezer. Do you ever feel that this is a dependent joy? Until you took a photograph of it, you probably never thought about how you're depending on this for joy. Does that sound reasonable that you took a selfie of your freezer? That's how you're living your life, dependent on what's in your freezer. The final part of our dynamics. I want you to take a fresh sheet of paper. We've gone into the past. We are in the present. Now we're going to go to the future. I want you to write down, and don't do it yet. I want you to write down one word or symbol, nama or rupa, of what kind of partner you want to be. A word or a symbol, nama or rupa, on a fresh sheet of paper. Put it on this sheet of paper. What kind of partner? That could mean you being a parent, a spouse, a caregiver, a friend, whatever you wish. What kind of partner do you want to be, become like, future? I'm excited about how excited you all are. I never asked you to show me. Yet, of course, yet. Now, first, I want you to bring that close to your heart. Let that word or symbol, and it should only be one, bring it close to your heart. Feel like you're taking a sankalpa, that what's outside of you is going to become inside of you. And now, if it's a symbol, I want you to show it to the screen. If it's a word, type it in the chat. Announce this to all of us. To be reliable, to be compassionate, to be accepting, uplifting, to be Sita, to be Soham, to be liberated, lovely. I see a happy face, one artistic seeker wrote a happy face. My phone has 50 of those right now. My prayers to the divine couple of Bhagavati Parvati, and Bhagwan Shiva, that the sankalpa that you've taken, that you follow through with this, through nishchaya, which means determination, and anirvinna, which means inspiration. Inspiration. Dialogue and dynamics is complete, and now so is our retreat. With this, our Chinmay Mission London organizers will facilitate the completion of our retreat.